welcome to another episode. I think this is 2 this week. I can't even keep track of these weeks anymore with what's going on in the market and everything else. But we've got Alex here from SwissBorg, Chief Partnership Officer. Super stoked to have him. We just found out that John and him went to the same university backstage. Yes. So I'm sure we're going to probably spend 40 minutes talking about that. No, I'm kidding. But really excited to bring him on. We've got some fun stuff today. We're actually going to be giving away a t-shirt, a LunarCRUSH Moon Boys t-shirt and hoodie. John's
does it look like this one? Does it look something kind of like
rocking the black right now?
Love it.
And then Alex is so kind that he's, whoever asks the best questions and we select those, we'll give you some hoodies, but we're also going to do a giveaway, from him. So we're super stoked for that. Just a disclaimer to everyone. Remember, we do not take payment for this live stream. We bring on cool people and projects that are building and are builders in the space. And, we want to give them that audience. So we're stoked to have him. Get in there, ask the questions in the chat. And then, as always, it says in all caps here, slam that subscribe button and get on. I think we've got Hacker Noon next week. We're going to be talking about, editorial in crypto. That'll be super fun, a little bit different than with some of the projects. So please join for that. And with that, John, what's happening with SwissBorg and social?
I just hope that I win the sweater because I could use another one. That'd be really nice. All right. Let me share my screen because you know what? That's what I need to do. Super excited to go over some of this data here because there's been a lot of growth. So when we look at SwissBorg, we're talking about something that is currently valued at about 675 million. That puts it at the 99th biggest market cap rank in the market, currently about 70 cents. When we look at the 2-year data here, I wanted to kind of zoom back. Usually we're focused a little more short term, but I just wanted to kind of zoom out and show the growth of the social ecosystem that we've seen around this. We can see that if we're looking at social volume, we're talking about up to 2,600 social mentions per day. But you go back here, 10 single double digits. And so we're seeing this huge growth, and that growth is becoming more frequent. When we look at the engagement of that, what you really be looking at the depth of the social posts. So when someone posts talking about SwissBorg, how many comments back are there? How many retweets are there? Likes? And how does that kind of trend over time? It's one thing to look at your feed and say, yeah, there was one big post. It's another to constantly see that and constantly see the community engaging. And it's really interesting because even just us like saying, hey, we're going to have Alex on from SwissBorg, the number of engagements that were going on, even on that post, was fairly unusual. So really great community. When we look at the number of individual accounts that are posting, again, look at this trend, kind of coming up a little bit, hanging out, and then just exploding. And so when we look at this, you really want to see that frequency and you want to see the number of accounts going way up. We're seeing up to, if I can get my mouse over here, again, up to about 2,357. This is like unique users, you could say, on a daily basis. And when we look at kind of all of this combined over time, pretty interesting to note, we introduced our alt rank back here and we see this general trend. You want to see it going down to number 1 as much as you can. So just over time to see the consistency of our alt rank kind of coming down. And what that's looking at, it's looking at like a broad-based measure of social metrics. It's saying, over time, is the social activity really outperforming the rest of the market? Because this looks at the entire market. And it's also looking at price performance. And it's saying, over time, is this outperforming or underperforming Bitcoin? And if you look at that it's pretty interesting because if you look at that from hey, my strategy is to earn more Bitcoin. If you're going to not be in Bitcoin, you want to be in coins that are outperforming Bitcoin. And so when you look at this kind of trending down over time, super, super healthy. I want to pull up, let me go back here. And I want to just pull up some, I'm going to go 1 year. And I want to look at the influencers. So what we also do is we we don't just say like, hey, what's that activity and call it a day. We don't just count the number of mentions. We look at all these different dimensions of social. And we actually look at, well, who's posting? And it's one thing if someone's posting, like one day, and they might be a big influencer, let's say hypothetically, Snoop Dogg comes out and says, yes, SwissBorg is the next big thing, right?
Definitely.
And he does one post. Who knows? Who knows these days, right? Yep. But let's say he posts one day. Well, okay, that might be influential one day. And then he never posts again. That does not make him a long-term influencer. That makes him an influencer just for that day. And why? Because we look at really these three different elements. We look at the engagement of the posts that these accounts have. We look at the number of posts over time that they have. And we look at the number of followers relative to everyone else that's also talking about SwissBorg. And so when we look at that on a yearly basis, we can see SwissBorg, #1 account. We see Martini Guy's been talking about SwissBorg a lot. We see Alex Fazel, Crypto Mobster, SwissBorg Mania, Kryptonites TV. So assuming they've created a lot of video content there. Stakedow, Wheatswind. I'm going to hopefully say that right. Whiteswind. Ollie White, Glavin Dennis, Dolphin, Cryptost, and Staking Rewards, just to name a few. So with that, let's bring in Alex, Joe, and let's chat about SwissBorg.
Awesome. Alex, what's up, my man? Thank you so much for being here.
What's up, Joe? What's up, John? Thank you so much for having me on the show. You guys are killing it with LunarCRUSH, man. It's such a new way of seeing the world through social sentiment data, and really it means so much more than technical analysis. So I really, really, really congratulate you two for creating such an amazing platform.
Oh, we appreciate that, man. I mean, we already got people rapping in the comments here with "Drop it like it's Borg, drop it like it's Borg." After John mentioned the Snoop Dogg, so it's happening, man. Well, yeah, we always like to start off by, where are you in the world today? What's it like there?
I'm in beautiful Nice, south of France. Where my brother and I grew up when we were little, and you can see, right? It has that Orange County weather. It's very nice, not too humid. I can't complain. And great rosé wine, by the way.
Oh, beautiful.
We'll be right over.
You guys are welcome anytime.
John's already going to fly out.
I'm on Expedia right now.
So Alex, tell us a little bit, about your history in the space. Why crypto? What makes you passionate about the space? Why did you get in, and how did that happen?
Yeah, it's really thanks to my brother, so Alex Fazel, who's the co-founder and CEO of SwissBorg. He's on vacay, a well-deserved vacay, by the way.
If you're in Nice, where do you like vacay on top of that? Like, is there do you go to the International Space Station? Like, I don't know. I don't understand.
He's in Tanzania right now, and he went camping in the middle of the night in this safari, and he woke up with 3 massive hippos around his tent.
That's not what you want.
Oh. That's not what you want. The most lethal animal on the planet for that humans, literally will stomp and destroy you for humans. He woke up and he took pictures and said it was the scariest moment. I'm so glad he's still safe, knock on wood, but scary stuff.
Whoa.
Well, glad he's safe.
Yeah, so long story short, my brother got me into this. It was actually November 2016. And I got a call. I was walking down Marunouchi, which is one of the corporate areas of Tokyo. I remember it was quite great. It was raining, and my brother just was talking so fast about the change of Finance 2.0, token economics. Everything is going to be tokenized. And he's talking about Ethereum, the virtual machine, the smart contract. And he was in a complete nerdgasm, as one of my friends would say from the US. Shout out to Joel. He had a complete nerdgasm. And, I just really didn't understand a single word of what he was saying. He said, trust me, Ethereum is a thing. And his heart was taken more by Ethereum than Bitcoin. A lot of people, they get into this for Bitcoin, but he just saw like something different with the arrival of smart contracts. And he bought me some Ethereum, to get me interested in it. And, obviously in the beginning, to be fully honest, I was in it more for the money. I had more extrinsic motivation factors, but now I'm in it it's in my soul. It's a part of my DNA, the community, and all the things that are around it. It takes my mind 24/7. So absolutely fell in love. And one thing I do want to share with some people out there, because a lot of people, they like to say kind of like, oh, I'm in this since 2012 or 2013, that it sounds so cool. One thing that I do want to share is that, I don't believe that what matters the most is not how long you've been into crypto, but how much you've contributed to the community and the ecosystem. And even with SwissBorg, we have community members that have been following us maybe for 3 to 6 months, like Glavin Dennis and some of these guys, Marco and Roman. They've been with us for maybe a year, 2 years, and they've already contributed so much in terms of creating educational content, in terms of getting people on board, sharing it with their family, with their friends. So I think that's something that obviously 2016 nowadays sounds cool, but really I don't think that matters the most. I see people in 3 months. A good example, by the way, is you guys know who, right? One of our biggest stars in crypto behind MicroStrategy. He's only been in this game for like a year and 2 months now. He actually announced in Bitcoin Miami that it's been like his first anniversary, but he's contributed more than any guy on the planet, right? When it comes to educating people about Bitcoin, sharing it, pitching it, really finding all the whys for everyone to truly understand how powerful this thing is. And that is, I have to ask you guys, Joe and John, if you imagine we're at the Olympics, right? And there was some sort of crypto versus haters debate, and you could choose 5 guys to represent our community, our big family. Who would you guys have in the top 5? Sorry for putting on the spot. It's a difficult question.
That's a great question. I'm going to steal that. Gosh, I'm actually really interested to hear what John is going to say, but I mean, I guess you have to say Michael Saylor. I mean, he's got to be on that team. I'd put CZ on that team too. I think a lot of people, depending on, I'm like already seeing what John's typing, so he's already giving me ideas. But I definitely think CZ. I won't pick those guys, John. I listened to him a lot in the early days, and like regardless. And even with what he said this last week of, he would step down if he needed to or whatnot. I can't remember if it was like an early like audio thing or podcast that he did where it was like, and I kind of learned a lot as a founder from this of just FUD and just like, how do you approach people? Like, how do you approach the competition question from investors, and how do you approach other people in the space? And, he basically said like, you just ignore it and you just keep building. Right. But I think it's actually, to extend on that, would be like, anyone that's in this space that's building and, say they're building something close to what we're building, even all things aside, that person would probably be like almost the exact same person as me. And I'd probably be extremely good friends with them. Right. So it's like, you don't want to take people that are doing things that are very similar to you and like turn on them. Like that just makes absolutely no sense and isn't good for the community as a whole. So that was something I learned from him. So I think he would be like, much better than other people would think he would be. Gosh, that's like 2. We could probably spend the whole next 60 minutes going through this.
Yeah.
John, you pick one.
John, I have to start with Tim Draper, of course, because when you go back to when he bought those Bitcoin that were seized from the U.S. government, man, those were different times. You want to talk about like, and then you look at what he's done over time. Did we lose Joe? You want to talk about what he's done over time. He's been relentless. He has not stopped preaching the good word of Bitcoin, all the while investing. He helped invest in us, and he's been into Tezos, and I think he's getting into a bunch of other projects too. There's a ton of them. So he's helped support this ecosystem in the background and in the foreground. So I give him a lot of credit. Vitalik, of course.
It has to be there, right?
Again, like go back to when it happened, like when he did that. It is not like today. It almost like you can look at things and go, oh, well, I see how that works, and I'm just going to improve upon it. I want to be more secure. I want to be faster. But like literally, like to be that creative and original and start up front when that happened, that's amazing. Don't even mention the DAO that got hacked way back. I mean, how crazy, if it wasn't, how crazy would it have been? Like there'd be a very different environment right now. I want to give Charlie Lee some credit for like early Charlie Lee before he cashed out at the top. Charlie Lee, just to try and innovate and go, how can we do this better? To think of a better way to do things. And some people would argue, well, all he did was fork Bitcoin and make it faster. Okay, cool. But again, go back to when that happened, and it takes some faith to do that. Charles Hoskinson, his round two, co-founder of Ethereum, and now he's doing so much that I don't know if people fully grasp with Cardano. There's a lot of really amazing things, and I'd say like, I got to throw out Stani Kulichov from Aave. I'm impressed, and the whole DeFi space, where this is going. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be here where it is if it wasn't for people like him. So I'll throw those 5 out.
That's an awesome list, but I think everyone would agree that Michael Saylor, despite having a year and 2 months, right, he would be a part of that 5-man superhero, or 5, just superhero team, right? So that was my whole point. Is kind of like, I really feel like even people just coming in, they started yesterday. It doesn't matter, you're part of the family, you're part of the community, and as long as you help grow the community and help us, reach that open financial world that we're really trying to achieve, that's what really matters the most to me.
No, I appreciate it. It's a great perspective, Alex. It really is. And it's so inviting, I think, to new members of the community coming in and not feeling like, oh, I wasn't here in 2015, so I don't know what's going on. You can become an expert in the space. It's just the amount of time that you're putting in. Some people can put a heck of a lot more time in 6 months than other people could put in 6 years. And just because you bought a little bit of Bitcoin in 2014 doesn't necessarily qualify you as like the most impactful person. So I think it's a beautiful way of thinking of it, and I think it's really good. So let's jump into SwissBorg a little bit, and unless John, you had something you wanted to add.
Nope, I just said that's pretty darn cool. I like the question. I like thinking about people that actually put effort in versus, when you're at a conference and someone walks up to you and go, yeah, I got it in 2010, but I lost my hard drive. And like there's so many people that say this, but then they don't actually support the space. So I think it's a great perspective.
Yeah, and it's incredible. And even with you guys, you just showed us through the website, LunarCRUSH, some of these guys that we have at SwissBorg, Glavin, Dennis, Romain, Jeremy, Marco, all these guys are just incredible. They've had days on your actual social sentiment where they're more influential than my brother and I, some of the guys who co-founded SwissBorg, and that's such a beautiful thing, right? And I really hope it continues to go that way, where people, to get the best information about SwissBorg won't even come from the people or the founding team, because they trust someone who is completely unbiased, who's just representing as an ambassador. And it's such a beautiful thing to see that on LunarCRUSH. So just wanted to share that with everybody.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great insight. It's one we always talk about, is if the community outranks the people, you want the community out there talking about it. It's not just, you at your birthday party by yourself. So tell us a little bit about SwissBorg. What are you guys up to? Give us the kind of the elevator pitch of what exactly you guys are doing out there so everyone knows.
Yeah, so SwissBorg is a 100% community-backed and driven crypto wealth management ecosystem. And what I mean by 100% community-backed and driven is, we never raise money through equity. We never did an equity round. We don't even value our equity. It's purely through tokenomics. And very few companies in the space could say that they just were born through an ICO, completely decentralized and distributed in terms of the funds, and everything revolves around the token, right? And that is something, that's the biggest dream, guys. If we one day we'll be able to show the world that you do not need equity, you do not need a legal stamp to prove that you're registered and that, all your books are transparent. If you could do it in a way where you don't need all this legislations and all this paperwork, and just rely on a token that it just creates something that's open to all, that is a massive shift. That's a paradigm shift right there, right? You're creating a company that is it's the next chapter of the way companies are built. And that's our dream, right? Is just to live without having to rely on equity, and just more importantly, just be completely 100% community focused.
Yeah, no, even just kind of seeing what an Eric Voorhees did this last 2 weeks with Shapeshift, and these companies that start kind of more centralized and kind of roll into a more decentralized way of operating, you can tell that everyone in the space they want to go towards that, right? And everyone's kind of trying to figure out the best way, because at the end of the day, it's the most transparent thing. If everything's on the blockchain, you can see everything. It's the most transparent. It's the least shadowy coder way, to kind of play a little bit on what happened this week. But so when you guys first started that, and you said out the gate, this is the way that we're gonna launch, how did you communicate that at the very beginning with the community?
That's a really good point. So in the very beginning, we were thinking, okay, SwissBorg was kind of built by traditional financial guys, right? Who just were working in hedge funds, were working at quantitative firms, were working at private banks, et cetera, et cetera. And they all had the exact same frustration. My brother was in Switzerland and he couldn't serve someone with less than 2 million Swiss francs just to invest, right? And he said, this is not, rocket science. Like, why does it have to be so exclusive? And I'm sure that's the drive, that's the motivation for many people, who work in the traditional world. They're just like, this is so freaking exclusive. Like, it's just so crazy. And it doesn't need to be. And all of the both co-founders and the founding members of SwissBorg had the same pain. They're just like, you know what, screw this. I put enough money on the side to just work on this for a while. Let's try to build something that's more meaningful. And my brother was just so frustrated. He would call me. He was almost getting ill, man. He didn't like his job, and it was a very toxic environment. And he got me into it. I wasn't a part of finance. He just said, come and join us. This is something that's really meaningful. I'm in my 40s, so I don't maybe have a lot of time to contribute to society. So I was thinking, this is the last chance for us to really make a meaningful change.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful because, when you think about what accredited investor means, right? And it's like, well, if you have a certain amount of money or you make over a certain amount of money, then you can have access to these projects or these companies that potentially, like a VC, are going to go wild, right? And like, that's VC investing, right? You throw 1,000 checks at the wall and one of them does 10,000%. That's literally what people have been investing in, the same way as you see kind of these crazy percentages in crypto. People are just now exposed to what venture capitalists have been exposed to their entire life. And so when you put a gate on the people, it's not democratizing opportunity, right? Like, and so if someone only put $50 into, Uber or Coinbase, equity at the beginning, they would be seeing the same upside, but instead it's someone that put $300,000 in because they were a millionaire and now they have $2 billion. Like, how is that helping? Just to clarify, we had Bernard here that said, so what is SwissBorg, a crypto exchange? So can you dive in just a little bit more on kind of the details about what people are doing with you guys?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bernard, for the question. So we're not an exchange. We don't have an order book. We're a brokerage platform, and very similar to what you were mentioning, John, earlier, like Expedia, right? We're kind of like an Expedia for crypto, where we connect, instead of connecting to airlines, we connect to crypto exchanges. And so for the time being, right now, we're connected to 4 exchanges. We're going to be connected to 5 pretty soon. So Binance, Kraken, Bitfinex, LMAX, HitBTC, etc. And the reason why we do that is exactly the same as Expedia.com or Skyscanner or Hotels.com. We just get you the best rate on the market. You buy, because there's so much spread between the exchanges. One exchange is going to have Bitcoin at a lower price. The other exchange is going to have ETH at a lower price. And there's just going to be massive spread across the exchanges. It's just completely fragmented. And so what we do is we just offer you best liquidity, best execution at the tap of your fingers directly with fiat gateways, with 15 fiat gateways, actually 16 now with the UAE dirham.
Interesting. So speaking of fiat gateways, I mean, here we are in the United States, Joe and I, and we were, checking out SwissBorg, doing some research, which I encourage everyone to do. It's actually really interesting to take a project and just dive in and see how it works. But the first thing that came up, not available in the United States. would love to hear more about that and why and what's going on there.
It's so hard, it's so complicated. And, from the day one, even for the ICO, we just didn't accept any US citizens or residents. It's just, the lack of clarity is what scares us the most, right? And we see like some players entering the US and then suddenly they kind of get kicked out or they get into some sort of legal confrontation and issues. I mean, even some of the companies in the US, they're getting kicked out of some states, right? Like recently, you see in the news, I mean, they're based in the US. They're American companies hiring American employees, and they're still, not 100% comfortable. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just the impression that I'm getting. So for us, it was just too much risk at the same time. And we didn't have the expertise either, right? If we had friends like you guys, maybe you could help us, set up a branch or something like that. But it's there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of legal risk. There's a lot of financial risk as well, because you need to hire all the local teams and you're not sure if you're going to be able to operate and stuff like that. So we just thought, okay, we want to be the main guys in the EU, and that's what we kind of focused on, geolocalization.
Yeah, it's a crazy environment when a politician has an agenda in the United States and you spend all this investment trying to be here, and then all of a sudden they sue you for fun, like, and you got to fight it and you got to pay it. It's going to cost you millions of dollars and you did nothing wrong. And so I think that there's a lot of crazy risk here, and it's unfortunate. It's you know, it seems like the U.S. is going to fall behind at this point, unfortunately. So you said you're not a crypto exchange. You're really aggregating all this data. What are some of the issues you see with existing crypto exchanges?
Right now, like, I think the biggest issue is a lot of exchanges try to run too fast without thinking about a long-term sustainable approach. And we're seeing a lot of regulatory crackdowns, right, John? You've probably noticed it, but, you know, exchanges getting blacklisted, getting sanctioned, and just running too fast before, you know, following procedures to live long-term. And for those reasons, they're losing banking partners. The banks don't want to work with them, so they don't have fiat gateways or good on off ramps, or they do, but they have massive spreads. And I think exchanges, some of them move too fast without really focusing on building the basics and doing things right from day one. I think that's going to be the topic. By the way, it already started in 2021. Second half of 2021, there are going to be a lot of crackdowns again. And I think 2022, as you guys saw with Biden, who wants to get $48 billion of tax money through crypto, you know, it's just the beginning, right? 2022 is probably going to be a big year of crackdowns and trying to, sadly, trying to get money out of us and slow things down a bit.
Yeah, it wasn't bad enough apparently with how crypto is taxed in the U.S., right? So I guess, you know, when you see these centralized exchanges and you see these decentralized exchanges, I mean, what does the future look like with these two parties? Are they going to work together? Are they going to do DEX's rule and centralized exchanges go away? Like, what's your vision on that?
I see DeFi being the backbone of all finance. DeFi is going to be the core infrastructure of all finance. And really, I'm not just talking about investment. I'm not just talking about trading or swapping. I'm talking about payments as well. I had a call with a guy. He worked for 15 years at the highest level, one of the biggest payment providers in the world. And they all realize that as blockchain scales, their infrastructure will become legacy, right? It'll just be legacy infrastructure. So I really believe DeFi will be the ultimate backend for all finance, you know, not just money markets, again, everything. And then obviously, you know, the centralized components, you know, they have to do KYC. I hope Uniswap won't be slapped on the hand and have to do KYC in the future, because it does take away a little bit of that, you know, sexiness of Uniswap and the openness, you know, for people who are in countries like my dad in Iran, right? Where they, you know, even if they want to try KYC, they don't have a criminal record. They're just not allowed because of stupid political stuff and embargoes that just fucks everyone's lives over. Sorry for my French, but no. it's a topic that catches my heart. That. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I believe, you know, it's going to be a little bit more regulated because there's so much money. I mean, when you see Uniswap having trading volumes that reach or surpass Coinbase's, that's when you, I mean, how can we keep going through without some sort of KYC, which I know people hate? But I do believe, you know, DeFi will be the infrastructure, and then there's going to be a little more regulations around, you know, where some of the centralized components will be directly connected to it, like Legos.
So like a combination of, like, perhaps some individuals need to KYC depending on what they're doing with centralized finance, and others maybe do not. Do you see that kind of dual path in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, DeFi, and I'm really hardcore DeFi. I'm pro DeFi. The only issues that I have with DeFi is that, you know, it's kind of missing one of the key points, which is the most important part of Finance 2.0, and that is inclusion, right? You know, when you have to pay, let's say, $50 to $60 to $70 gas fees for a single transaction, I mean, that is already, you're cutting out 30% of the world minimum, right? You're just that's not inclusion. And Finance 2.0, I think more than anything else, it's inclusion, because as we were talking about earlier, right, with the whole story of SwissBorg, everything was so exclusive, and being exclusive like that is really bad because it creates like wealth gaps, and those wealth gaps are what create crime on the streets, blood, violence, right? Because people just think this is not fair, man. This is just totally unfair. And for those reasons, I think DeFi at the moment is amazing. It's open for all, it's neutral, but it's still lacking in terms of inclusion. And it's also lacking in terms of accessibility, because you need to be technical, right? Around it. And for those reasons, and I know, not your keys, not your coins, and all these cool things that come from DeFi and the hardcore guys, but at the end of the day, I still think you need components of centralized nature, right? I'm a very clumsy guy. I'm afraid I'm not just afraid to have my funds stolen. I'm afraid to lose my own funds, right? Or lose my private key. And I'd rather have it actually on a centralized custodian. I know it sounds crazy, right? But personally, for me, as someone who's a bit more goofy, I would rather have a trusted third party, like holding it for me, because I would just be too afraid of losing it all. So there has to be some sort of combination, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think you're crazy. I mean, I bet 98% of all wealth is centralized somewhere, right? Like, we're just at the tip of the iceberg of, holding your own money. And the people that are kind of hardcore in the space, they're trying to lead this thing that, I mean, you're telling me that at least in this generation, people that are maybe a little bit older and have worked with banks, you think they're just going to write down like their 12 word passphrase and keep that on a piece of paper somewhere, and like, someone's parents who are in their 70s or 80s are going to be doing some of this stuff? Like, these people were around when like color TV was just getting started, so it's like there's no way they're going to figure out like what address do I send that to. They're just having someone else do that for them, and so we need to empower the someone else doing that for them to be that more decentralized nature. But I agree with you. I don't think that will be fully decentralized, maybe ever, for a very long time.
100%, Joe. And
go ahead.
Just sorry, just because I have an anecdote to share related to that. And on SwissBorg, there's one lady in Switzerland. She's more than 80 years old. And I can guarantee you, if you put her on Curve or Aave and stuff like that, and try to install a MetaMask wallet, send the ETH to pay for the gas fees, I guarantee you'll lose her in 1 minute. But even though we're centralized, which is less cool, obviously, she is using her app. She has access to DeFi. She's earning DeFi yields. We're talking about a lady, she's 82 years old. Super cool, by the way. When I talked to her, actually, I had the chance to meet her, and she was just like, Alex, I just want to be a part of this thing, and I want to be a part of change. And she can use it because the UX is so easy. So I know a lot of DeFi people, they get angry. I'll say you're CeFi, kind of stuff like that. But at the end of the day, accessibility and inclusion is really what matters the most to me.
Right. I was just going to say, I would dare anyone to go ship their grandmother a Trezor and just say, get started. Don't give them instructions. Just say, go and figure it out and see if they can. And they can't. And that's the interesting thing when you think about, for example, the price of Bitcoin. If it were really, really easy across the board for every individual in the world, Bitcoin's already $1 million. And if you think about how if it's that easy, you have everyone in. This space is still small. And I think some people enter this space thinking it's supposed to just be like push a button, it's done. And I think that this space takes like weeks and months and years of involvement to grasp. And I think we're not even at the mental area here of like, what is crypto? How does it all work? Like what do these coins do? Like it takes a lot of time. And I think it's just an interesting time where I think, if you can create something easy, man, that's amazing. You win.
Yeah.
It's a UX battle right now. Because it is too hard for self-custody, especially.
Think about, what are you doing, Alex? You're taking someone who's 82 years old, who otherwise would not be invested in DeFi at all or anything crypto, and you're taking that, and what are you doing with it? You're investing in DeFi for them, right? So it's like, how can these people that are so hardcore be like, hey, this other person that otherwise would not even be in this market is now in this market, but just in a slightly different way, run by people that are all in on this, so I think it's, obviously it's a small population that is very vocal, and we see a lot of that today. But I think that, projects and apps like yourself are going to be the ones that bring in the rest of the population that will just, it's like, I don't, people, it's like, hey, you're going to set up your own servers and run, your own box and, have like a local host at your house to run like your website. Like, no, you're not doing that. Right. It can't scale. So it's just we need people, we need UX, experts, and we need marketers in the space now.
And it definitely, and obviously, like Joe and John, like some of the key points, a lot of people are looking for high APY, right? They want high returns. But I think the coolest thing about that, obviously, we had averages. We had days where we had 32% on USDC directly paid into USDC.
Wow.
So we had crazy yields. And over the course of the past 6 months, our average on USDC was 20%, which is very, very high, right? But on top of that, it's not the traditional lending and borrowing. This is all going into DeFi. And I think at our peak, we had close to $1 billion in DeFi and pools, really allowing the system, to have the right liquidity to function, right? So it's not just about trying to offer something that has supposedly the best risk return farming products in crypto, but we're participating, right? We're all helping DeFi grow, whether it be Polygon, BSC, Ethereum. That's so cool.
Okay, I got some big questions, and I'm excited to ask you about this. So, and by the way, before I ask in the chat, make sure you're asking questions, because don't forget, there are some giveaways here. What are we doing? A hoodie, this hoodie, a shirt, and then we're doing some other giveaways. What was it, $50 or something? What was that?
Yeah, and CHSB, $50 to 2 people.
Okay, so start asking those questions. I want to talk about business models. And this is something like near and dear to us. As an example, we get a lot of page views. We could have plastered banner ads all over our site. We chose not to. We have a different path we're taking. I see you guys have taken a path where you have CHSB. You've kind of done a riff on a business model. What if I said like Coinbase, and I'm going to publicly say it, those atrocious fees when you use the Coinbase app are unbelievable. Lots of reasons for that. But I think you've done something really interesting with your token. You've created these kind of different tiers of users, different features. Would love to hear a lot more about the utility of CHSB and how that relates to your business model.
Absolutely. And just talking about the tokenomics in general, actually, I don't even own any stocks anymore. I'm not interested in owning stocks. I don't believe there's enough value. I really feel like tokens are like a stock 2.0, because even if you have common stock where you have voting rights and dividends, that's the limitation right there. A stock doesn't go further. A lot of my friends are thinking, you're crazy, you're not diversifying. I'm like, no, man, like tokenomics have so much more value and so many more features than a simple stock would have. I mean, even if you look at the FANG stocks, right? Like, none of them are common stocks, so you can't even vote, right? If you're lucky, you may get dividends. But really, tokens, and especially multi-utility tokens, are the future without a single doubt. And I have so many analogies, but I won't dwell too much on that. Like for us, like guys, it was like, so the best performing token of all time, right? From 2016 to 2021, we're in July, end of July, or early August. It's the BNB coin, right? It's the Binance coin.
Right.
So success leaves hints, right? Like what did they do that made it so successful? And they kicked off with the first model, which is if you hold our tokens, you will save money. That's as simple as that, right? You get discounts and you save money. On top of voting, for other projects to list. So they had voting and saving money, right? So those were the key utilities that really helped Binance explode. And then there was not much innovation for a while. A lot of tokens really didn't have real use cases or real utilities until, for me, the next step, like the second generation of multi-utility tokens, were the Celsius and, let's say the Nexo tokens, right? Because they offered yields. All of a sudden, instead of saving money, you're making money. So that was big innovation, right? All of a sudden, people are like, oh, wow, I'm going to be able to boost my yield, boost my returns for owning a specific token and a ratio. And Celsius and Nexo, what they did really, really well from 2020, the latter halves from July, August, is that you would have to keep a ratio of their tokens in order to benefit from maximum yield. So the curve is actually not fixed. It's a flexible curve where, if your yields grow, you still have to keep accumulating the sell tokens to still benefit from maximum yield. So that was a genius model. You're like, oh shoot. And on top of that, one thing that they do really well is they buy back the tokens because they pay in kind. They buy back from the secondary market and then they distribute it to the community. And that's brilliant because when they buy back, they're creating buying pressure constantly. And for those reasons, the Cell token was one of the best performing tokens in 2019, 2020. And Nexo has been killing it as well since September 2020 onwards. And that was really innovative. And for us, it's like, okay, we want governance rights. We have something called referendums where we had 2 votes on the blockchain. We had over 20,000 participants, which was awesome. Wow. And we asked the most important question of all. It's like, once you raise the money, we asked guys, do you want us to put all of your money into a desktop version or a mobile app? I voted desktop. My brother, the CEO, voted desktop. The community voted mobile. Luckily, they were smarter than us, so we went mobile because there's less competition. Smart. The community is amazing. And so we thought, okay, governance rights, save money, make money. Obviously, we can go into more detail and more complexities, but I just want to keep it, the kind of surface level if you guys want today. And we thought if you have that 3 combination, you give a voice, save money, and make money, then that is probably going to be a successful token through memberships. And then there's a layer of memberships, like everyone wants to be a member somewhere and be even more involved in the community. And that membership kind of play, obviously, is also a great move for the community to feel valued and know that they're a part of one big family.
What are some of the, actually, let me back up. Did you say you had 20,000 people vote in a governance process?
Yeah, we did. In total, I think the first vote was, I'll find the numbers for you guys, but in total, we had over 20,000 votes, which was really cool. And people get rewarded for voting, right? They get more tokens. So, that was super cool. And nowadays, guys, we have over 100,000 token holders. So the tokens are being more and more decentralized. And we have a few initiatives where we think we can further strengthen the token because it's the heart of our ecosystem. One thing that I learned from Jeff Bezos and Amazon is, do you guys know that little story when he's in a meeting room with the chairs? Have you heard that story?
I have not.
No.
So it's a really famous story. One of my best friends works at Amazon, and I confirmed with her, and she said it's true. Everyone knows about this story. Is whenever they have a really critical decision to make. So let's say it's us 3, right? So we're in a meeting room with 3 chairs. He's always going to put 1 extra chair, and he's going to leave that chair empty. And the reason why he's going to leave it empty is because that last chair represents the customer. So once we go through the ideas, everyone shares their opinion, then all of us have to share opinion at looking at that empty chair and really thinking from the perspective of the Amazon shopper or the Amazon user. And for us, it's pretty much the same for the token, right? There's always political stuff. There's always bias in every meeting, in every opinion. But if you have that, empty chair where you're thinking, for us, it's like the token. What makes the most sense for the CHSB token, which is the heart of the community. So, sorry to bore you guys with that, but I thought it's a pretty cool anecdote.
Great. I'm already thinking now for our company meetings, I'm just going to log into Zoom with my phone as like a different avatar. And that's going to be like the LunarCRUSH customer. So as we go around, then I'll point to that one and say, what would they say? I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. So on CHSB, you have these levels. I guess, like, what do the users get for each level? Do you see additional levels in the future? And how do you see, I guess, CHSB evolving, if you can talk about that to some degree?
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest utilities that kicked in 2021, as you guys know, is the Launchpad utility. We had Polkadot, right? We have SoulStarter building on Solana, and you have multiple Launchpads. And I think that is, farming other tokens. That is a utility that we want to slap on. Obviously, Binance has it as well, the Binance Launchpad, where you just stake BNB or BUSD and you can farm other cool project tokens. The only issue with Binance is that they put too many other tokens. Like, you can farm with Polkadot and you can farm with, XYZ token. While I think they should have stayed focused only on BNB. So that would just strengthen the utility of the Launchpad, of the farming utility. So that's something that we want to do, I think, eventually, is to be, again, an aggregator. We're an aggregator for execution. We're an aggregator for yield farming, and become an aggregator for farming, just tokens in general. And be blockchain agnostic. If we can work with, we're already going to work with a launch pad that's building on Cardano. And then if we can work with a launch pad that's building on Solana, and get all the guys aligned and be one big aggregator of giving people the ability to farm cool project tokens with the CHSB token.
Very cool.
So I'm just looking at some of these questions in the chat. They're like asking
so many.
All of them are just like, which Joe and John would you buy? How much SwissBorg do you own? Just like going through this. But
by the way, guys, should we give a third prize? Should we give like 3 times $50 since
Sure.
we have some cool people? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only problem is I don't even know who to choose for a question. I almost want you guys to pick it. Like, there's so many, and I don't even know what you're comfortable answering now. There's like exchange listings, like.
yeah. I don't know if we want to do like any exchange listing ones. Someone just asked if they can just win it.
I mean, on this note of like the community participating, I would be curious to hear how you view the community fitting into what you're doing, and other than the empty chair, of course. But like, how do you view the community? I mean, obviously we were going through the metrics earlier. You've got a lot of activity going, and it just keeps accelerating from what the data looks like on a long-term 2-year period. We continually see it going up. I guess, how do you view them and everyone around you relative to what you're doing?
Guys, it is so important. It is really, and the thing about the community for me, it's really one big family. Whenever I go to a new city, I try to post a selfie, say, hey, who wants to hang out? I got some swag with me, and let's go grab some drinks. And I really try to, even though our timetables are getting busier and busier. But one thing that's important for me is I don't want us to identify ourselves as an army or as Marines or as soldiers or whatever silly term it is. It's just one family with the same vision and shared principles and values. Nothing more than that. And we don't want to have this, because there's so much animosity on Twitter and so many people fighting back with each other. And the whole purpose of crypto and blockchain is to be non-political, right? I mean, when you really think about it, how would you define Bitcoin? Some people say it's the best store of wealth on the planet's gold 2.0. It's the intersection of blah, blah, blah. But it's a statement against political BS, right? Isn't Bitcoin that's what it is? Because all of it, when you think about the root cause, and you go, like the way Japanese people like to do it, is you go 5 whys back, right? All the way to find the root cause of a problem. If you have issues with quantitative easing, if you have issues with inflation, most of it is political, right? Most of it is due to political BS. So I just wish that, our SwissBorg community never fights. And when it happens, you can see people just sharing love. They're like, hey man, we're all in this together, and there's so much support. And like you guys on LunarCRUSH, some of them have more influence than I do or than my brother does. And that's what it is, man. There's nothing that matters more than this. Nothing. I know it sounds cliche, but really it's true.
Well,
so how does that relate in terms of projects that you choose to list? Like, how do you look at their communities? Like you mentioned Marines. I won't mention which one that is. There's actually multiple projects that say they have Marines now. But like, what do you look at when you choose for assets to list? I mean, obviously liquidity and can you trade it, but are you looking at these different social signals with the assets that you list?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, by the way, it's my personal opinion. It doesn't mean we won't list anybody, but it's just, I think it's so a good mindset to have. But yeah, we have like multiple factors, right, on how to list tokens. Obviously, like you mentioned, liquidity. And up to now, we played it kind of safe, right? The blockchain, the infrastructure tokens, a few payment tokens, DeFi tokens, and really those that have a great community. We've met maybe the co-founder. We talked about Stanley earlier. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
And we know the guys on a personal level. We know they're ethical. We know that even some of the projects that are, they have a little bit of an animosity from others. We meet the employees and we know they're good people, right? So the public image versus who's actually working there is there's quite, a negative correlation there. So we just try to look at we feel has great technology, good liquidity, and a great community that follows.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's great. So, just to comment on your community and the way that you're talking, you can see, people talk about armies or Marines. People in your community are posting green hearts all up and down the chat, which is like, you guys have the green kind of logo. And so it seems like they've attached to that. It's almost like, hey, give peace a chance type feel, which is like, you can tell that's because it's coming from you guys as, the originators and the founders of this that, put it out to the community, and they chose hearts, right? So they didn't choose an army, they chose all of that. And so it's just interesting. So I think I got the first question here, which is like a little bit longer one, but there's one piece of it that I really like. But it's from Steve Hess. So Steve, you're going to get a t-shirt or hoodie and $50 worth of CHSB. What do you guys think? What will be the future 5 years ahead from tomorrow for cryptos? Will there be regulations of usage? And then I like this one. Will there be fiat? And how can our future look? So thank you, Steve. Get us in the DMs on Twitter at LunarCRUSH, and we'll get you everything. But what do you guys think? Will there be fiat?
John Joe, what do you guys think? You're in the U.S., right? There's actually this author in Switzerland who wrote The Death of the U.S. Dollar, which is a bit of a scary book, to be honest. I really don't hope this is going to happen, but I'd love to hear your views, guys.
I can start, I guess. I mean, I think like we're seeing a little unraveling right now with regulation. There has to be some sort of marriage between what's happening in the space and with tech startups forever, it's like move fast and break things, and like crypto's doing that at like 100 times the speed, which I think is great because we can all see what the future looks like. But I mean, like regulation is meant to protect people, right? Like we're sitting here and we're talking about people that otherwise would never be able to invest in DeFi, so they need something more simple, right? And so whenever there's that type of person finding something new, there's going to be potentially people out there that try and take advantage of that. But I think framework, in order to allow these things to happen in a more seamless and quick way without damaging the speed and the change, needs to happen in some way. I wish there was more of a council. I wish more people, here in the US went to Washington to talk about some of this stuff. But inherently with crypto, everyone just wants to go to their corners and be like, nah, I'm just going to do my own thing. But I mean, imagine like turning a ship, right? Like as startups, you can just pivot and go, right? And then even like medium-sized corporations, it takes longer to turn the ship. And then you think about how long is it going to take Amazon to pivot their entire business model, right? And then you think, well, what's even larger than that? Governments, right? And then you're talking about a government that's been in place in the US for so long, it's going to take a generation to change, right? We're still talking to people in like, I think the average age in Congress is like in 60s or 70s even, 70s. So it's like if you're 35 or you're 19, you're thinking about the world in a completely different way than that person's thinking about the world. And so I think it just takes time. But I think, like Tim always says from our side, he goes, if you ask someone under the age of 30, do you want $10,000 or do you want $10,000 in Bitcoin? They're always going to choose Bitcoin. Right. And then maybe if you ask someone who's a little bit older, do you want $10,000 or, a third of a Bitcoin or a fourth of Bitcoin right now? They're going to take the Bitcoin, right? Because that's the future and that's what they believe in. So I think some of these things are just going to take time, but I think it's going to be probably much longer until we fully get rid of fiat, from countries, because that's kind of the way that they garner that power in a certain way. So it's just going to slowly kind of move away. So that's my opinion.
I absolutely love this question. So great question, Steve. I think this is the topic of a conference, but I guess we'll answer it in a couple seconds here. But my thought is, and it's it's an interesting time what's about to happen. It's a huge convergence that I think will end up being led by user experience. What I mean by that is like take how many governments are talking about CBDCs right now? I don't know the number, but a lot. If you look at that, think about what that means. That means that the government has digitized their dollar, and you, the citizen of that government, will have a wallet on your phone. Notice how I didn't say that wallet's from any bank. And so you've got this interesting scenario where governments, maybe not universally, but some countries will do it. They're automating their banking system. The government has a direct connection to you, and part of that's pretty scary, because the government can choose to approve or deny transactions to individuals, if you think about it that way. They can choose to whitelist or blacklist entities directly. But you've got that on one hand, bypassing banks. You've got DeFi on the other, bypassing banks. And you got banks in the middle saying, I want to work with CBDCs and DeFi. And all of it exists. And if this is all digital, why do you need bank branches? Why are you seriously still walking into a bank? There's a bank, Chase Bank is building a new location across the street from my house in this environment. I don't understand it. But like, I think it's a really interesting convergence, but ultimately it comes down to like, what's the best user experience for an individual? But I'm also really intrigued to see what like El Salvador is doing here, because if El Salvador was to do a CBDC and say Bitcoin is legal tender, it's almost like we talked to Terra a few weeks ago. They got Luna and they got UST. It's almost similar to a degree, where you've got this like dual token system at a government level. So I'm curious to see what El Salvador is going to do. It does make them more sovereign if they can mine, if they can do things green, if they can get individuals to adopt this stuff. But again, even that requires ultimately, how's that user experience? So I'm curious. Now, Alex, your turn. We asked you, go for it.
I couldn't agree more with what both you guys said. It's really, if the only thing I would add is just on the fiat issue thing. I think one thing that we have in terms of misconceptions in the crypto space is that just because they're quantitative easing, the value of the fiat currency is going to drop. That's not how it works. That's not how hyperinflation or strong inflation actually happens. And I think that's one thing that we need to understand. It's basically a combination of events, right? It's number one, obviously, quantitative easing is not great either, because you're increasing the supply. But on top of that, it's debt, right? It's an increase in debt that has to be connected with each other, because if you're printing money, but your country is still very productive, right, and producing with a high GDP, it doesn't matter, right? Japan has been doing quantitative easing for ages, and the Japanese yen has stayed so strong against gold. So it's not just quantitative easing. So it has to be a combination of that plus global debt, and more importantly, it has to be mistrust in the government, right? To the point where people don't want to use the US dollar anymore, let's say, for instance, which is not the case, right? You go anywhere around the world and you offer them US dollar. If you go to Iran, where my dad lives, and you offer them US dollar, they're going to jump on it, right? I mean, they know that US dollar is the currency, obviously the global reserve currency, and it's a currency that is accepted in so many countries. So I think that's one misconception. I do not think that any of these big currencies will die, as some hardcore dudes would think. US dollar is going to zero, and GBP and euro, etc. Obviously, over time, Bitcoin is without a doubt the best store of wealth. And by the way, for my family, I don't have any fiat. It's all Bitcoin. It's all yielding Bitcoin for future generations, right? I'm not going to keep the fiat because, time has already told us over a century, we know that it loses value against the gold. So I think that's one thing, just a misconception I want to clarify, because I saw the fiat part in that question, and it's a combination of events, and there has to be some sort of big political coup where people are just like, you know what, screw this, I'm not using the Bolivaro anymore. And that's the problem. That's where everything, you increase supply and people don't want to use it. There's no demand. And that's where a currency goes through massive hyperinflation.
Love it. No, thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
So I want to add, this is kind of an interesting topic. Revax01. So make sure you get us in the Twitter DMs at LunarCRUSH. And not so much like, like children could be, depending on like the age, I think in some countries, but it's like, I like this question because it brings up more about like education, right? And like this next generation, and like, we talk a lot about college here in the US or university, right? Where, people are spending, at some of these universities, and even in Southern California here, $50,000, $60,000 a year to go to these universities to, get a degree that may or may not be helping them, and put them a couple $100,000 in debt because they need to be going to this, or, if their parents have a bunch of money and pay for it, then they don't have to, they don't have to come out of school with a ton of debt, and they're never going to get out of it. But I think it's interesting because it's, how do you get people, I feel like the education that comes from being in this space early on, and if someone's 13, 14, 15 years old and they're playing Axie Infinity right now, or they're playing Splinterlands, or they're learning about finance at the same time, where, I truly wish that the amount of Rainbow Six and EverQuest that I played as a child could have gotten me some actual money out of that versus just getting yelled at constantly to get off the computer at 3 a.m. But it's like, maybe we could just like talk about this a little bit of like what education looks like, and like how is that generation from, we'll call it 13 years old to 18 years old, how is that going to change? Just kind of open-ended.
I mean, without a doubt, without a single doubt, this whole video game gamer esports generation is the easiest to understand Bitcoin. I mean, when you look at Mt. Gox, it was built by gamers, and people are playing by World of Warcraft and all those old school games, PC games. So I couldn't say it better than you, Joe. That's just perfectly put. It's the new generation just get it, right? They just get it to the point where, I see some of my younger cousins, they're playing video games and they receive a virtual sticker like, oh yeah, this is so cool, on the Nintendo Switch or whatever. And I'm like, this is a virtual sticker. Who cares about a virtual sticker? That just shows how out of sync I am, right?
Right.
How much of a gift. They're like over the moon. They're like, wow, this super cool sticker. And when I see those type of reactions on how excited they are just to receive a virtual sticker on a Nintendo Switch game, then I realize, oh my God, this transition is going to be so easy for them.
I like that.
I keep wondering how, like, I've got, 2 boys and they're in their teens, and all they want to do is crypto invest all the time. And I find myself investing for them. Like, I guess, like, logistically, like, how do we get anyone, whether, it doesn't matter how young they are, how do we get them to invest? And maybe there's like parental oversight. Is there can I check a box as a parent and say, yes, it's okay? Like I'm curious how that evolves. Cause I mean, a 10-year-olds want to get involved. 8-year-olds want to get involved. They want to buy a little Bitcoin. Grandma gives them $50 for their birthday. They want to buy Bitcoin with it. How do we get there? Is that possible?
Yeah, that's a really good question. How do we get there? Joe, you want to help?
All right. I was trying to get the Revax and Steve Hess's email addresses, because I just realized I'm probably going to get 40 DMs on Twitter from fake names already, because people are just so hardcore on that. So sorry, John, repeat.
Well, I mean, look, like, so like, let me give a scenario. My son's grandmother gives him $50 for his birthday. It's okay that that's a check. It's okay that he deposits it into a bank account. It's not okay that he transfers that into Bitcoin or any altcoin or DeFi or anything. Yet, like, we are headed to this environment where there's going to be CBDCs, there's DeFi that will exist, there's fiat. They will all coexist in some manner. But it's only okay for my son to get $50 in fiat and leave it in fiat until he turns 18. Then all of a sudden, magically, it's okay, legally speaking. So this is a weird time. It doesn't make sense to me. They can get they can get a bond, a government bond from, like,
I was going to say, get your government bond, and that's it.
Yeah,
wait 30
right.
years.
So you got to wait 18 years of your life to accumulate wealth, unless it's fiat.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's a problem, right? But I mean, it's like, I think there's definitely, like, just like we were talking about with the older generation, there's younger folks that just may not be interested at all in finance. And they're like, I need money to live. And that's to the extent of it. I'm going to go do this other thing with my life. And that's awesome. And that's amazing. And it's like, that's great. But why not give them access to the rest of this financial market that we have access to? And how do you make that simple, and how do you make that easy is the hard part. John, can you hear me? I think StreamYard might have just went kaput.
I think it did too. Here, there we go.
I think StreamYard just went. I got all these comments now on here just going like, what in the world? Are you guys back?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
I'm back. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Sorry to everyone in the chat.
All of a sudden, everything started like loading for some reason, and it went robotic. Yeah, I think the actual server had issues.
Yeah, that was crazy. Everything went down. All right, we're back. Also, Revax, if you're in the chat still need your Twitter handle, bud. So put it in there. And I think we're going to choose one more question here.
Can I just add just one thing real quick, John, on your question about, kids not being able to do anything, even though they may get allowance, right? From age 5 or 6, right? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But one thing that I've done in the past like few months is just recommend money management books for parents to read to their kids. And there's one that is really good, which is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's actually all through a story. It's narratives. So I shared it with one of Jacob, by the way, shout out to you, brother. I shared it with one of our community members, and he's been reading some chapters. I think maybe it was him or another friend was reading it to his son. And because it has a story format, it's a bit cool. It's less of the technical jargon and all that stuff. It's a great book, I think, for already understanding the basics of money management.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
Such a great book. And he's actually been pretty vocal in the last couple of weeks. I still think there's like an epic meme that needs to be made about him. Just like, I don't know if it was like some sort of podcast that he was on, but he's just like staring at the camera and he just goes, "Why would you want money when they're printing money?"
Right.
Just like such a matter of fact of just like, it's like the same words that everyone said like 1,000 times, but for some reason him just like in awe of just like the stupidity of it. I was just like, he's absolutely right. Why would you want money when they're printing money? It's just like, I get it.
He's so charismatic, right? It's crazy.
That was a great story. If people don't know that story, he wrote a book about I think his dad was a very educated college professor. I think his mom was a very educated as well, college professor. And then he had a friend, and his friend's, dad, I don't even think had a college education. I think might have even left high school, but was just much wealthier than his family. And so he was always very curious about why, and kind of learned that there's a way of, whether it's making money or, education doesn't always mean this. And it's a really nice story that I think everyone should learn, but it doesn't discount, I think, education. It just shows that there's different needs for different things. I wish I could read some of this. Some of this is in French. John, did you see any other questions that you thought were really good in here?
I had one, and then we crashed, and then now I don't know where it is in all of these questions, and I'm trying to find it.
I think there was one, and maybe we can do it really basic. I'll find it here. But someone asked, when SwissBorg NFTs?
SwissBorg NFTs. That's a good question. We've had a few of them, actually. We have a partnership with Engine, one of my favorite projects, by the way. And I'm biased.
Love Engine.
I know we know the team very well, and just they're amazing. So they're actually the ones who build our NFTs, and we send them directly we do them for AMAs. But I think the most important evolution for NFTs for us is to have it as the membership, right? When you have a limited membership and have that NFT that represents the identity, the background, so that if one day they want to sell their membership, imagine you have a membership for a really cool club in California, an exclusive club, so that they'll be able to sell it directly on a secondary marketplace. I think that's how we want to evolve with NFTs.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this was awesome. I mean, we did a full over an hour. Appreciate. I know it's it's a little bit later where you are, so I appreciate you staying on with us and getting to know our community a little bit, and obviously a lot of your communities in here too. But what can you leave us with? Where do people find you guys? How do they sign up? What do you want everyone to do?
Yeah, so guys, definitely check us out on SwissBorg.com. We are on Discord, we're on Telegram, on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I'm Alex Fazel, Fazel. And we also have a show called Kryptonites TV, which I should get you guys on one of these days, especially if you come to London. We have the production studio there, so everything is in 4K.
Would love that.
So that would be amazing. We can get you in the full production,
Very cool.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you guys, everyone, for listening. We're gonna shoot out these T-shirts and everything else to you guys. I got all the Twitter handles, so we'll get your information, and we'll pass it along to Alex as well, and we'll make it happen. So thank you guys so much for listening, Alex. Dude, awesome. Such a pleasure meeting you. We'll chat with you backstage, and John, as always, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.